Last time we finished up with the vitamins. And
Mhm.
so now we're moving on to minerals. Very exciting stuff. We don't always know a lot about minerals.
I see. So what are the differences between vitamins and minerals? And when we are live, right, by the way, we're already on Facebook right now. So what are the differences between minerals and vitamins?
Sure, sure. So vitamins and minerals are part of our micronutrients, and they are vital for every function of the body. But vitamins, those have different functions, and we need a bit more of them than we do minerals. We need much less minerals for regular functioning of the body. But they're still as important. They're needed for repairing, for building, for cleansing, for regulating. And there are 18 essential minerals found in foods, and plants provide all the minerals that we need. We have major and minor minerals. And they're called major because we need more than 100 milligrams per day of certain minerals like calcium. That's a very popular one. We've all heard of calcium and how much we need calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, chlorine, magnesium, and sulfur. Those are our major minerals. The minor minerals are also called trace minerals. And we need less than 100 milligrams of those, but they are not less important because if you're missing any of these guys, you start to have some weird symptoms. You start to not have proper bodily function, and it's because of these little tiny trace minerals that we're lacking. Some examples of those, you don't hear them as often: boron, chromium, copper, iodine, iron, manganese, selenium, and zinc. And that's just a few. There are others, but some of them you haven't even heard of before. They're not spoken of often. We're going to talk today about calcium because it's the most abundant mineral in the body. Most of the calcium that we take in goes to the bones and the teeth. It's vital for those structures to form normally. The rest is in the blood. But more important than the amount of calcium we eat is the amount of calcium that's absorbed. And I want that message to resonate with everyone because you may be taking lots of calcium pills and trying to drink lots of milk and eat lots of yogurt, but it's not so much how much you eat, but how much actually gets in through your GI tract. So let's talk about things that will increase your calcium absorption. Vitamin D. You need adequate amount of vitamin D in the body because they are both absorbed together through the GI tract. And how do we get our vitamin D? The sun is an awesome way to get vitamin D. We need to go outside every day and get sunshine. Exercise also helps with mobilizing the transfer across the GI tract. And so we need to get regular exercise every day. For folks who are bedbound or immobilized for long periods of time, they start to not absorb calcium well, not integrate well into their bones, and they get very soft bones. Even astronauts, astronauts who are in space for a period of time, they don't have that proper exercise and weight on their muscles and bones, and they lose calcium and they get osteoporosis and soft bones. You also need to have proper acid in the upper intestinal tract. Now, why is that important? Acid in the GI tract helps with proper absorption. And so when you take things like antacids, it decreases how much calcium you're actually getting inside your blood and in your bones. And also periods of increased need help with more absorption. So we need most calcium when we are infants, when we are teenagers, when we are pregnant, and breastfeeding. Those are major times of increased calcium need. And so you tend to absorb whatever is available, you'll absorb more because your body needs it even more. What decreases calcium absorption? Well, One of them is something called oxalic acid. This is an acid found in certain foods. And I'm mentioning it because you may hear it said somewhere else, and they may say, well, there's oxalic acid in spinach, so you can't get calcium from spinach. Well, I want to make the point clear here for all plant-based eaters and those endeavoring to be plant-based eaters. When you eat foods with oxalic acid, let's say like spinach or rhubarb, these foods, yes, the oxalic acid binds with the calcium, so you can absorb it as well from those foods, but they don't affect the calcium in other foods. So it doesn't limit how much calcium you're going to get from your sesame seeds or from your kale or from your beans. But you do have other benefits from those foods. So go ahead and eat your spinach, but it may not be giving you all the calcium that you want just from those particular foods. Also, phytic acid may decrease absorption of calcium. Where do you find phytic acid? You find it in grains. It's in the outer part of grains and in certain nuts. And so phytic acid does bind up a little bit of calcium, and you may not absorb it as well. But it's no reason to say that a plant-based diet cannot provide enough calcium. It totally is not. It's just to be aware for those who want to have more education about the plant-based lifestyle. High protein diets are a big culprit for decreased calcium absorption, because when protein is being broken down and excreted, calcium also is peed out with the protein byproducts. So you lose more calcium in the urine the more protein you eat. So folks who eat a lot of protein, a lot of meat, and a lot of dairy, even though dairy is giving you calcium, the increased protein makes you pee out some more. So high protein diets lead to loss of calcium, mostly by urination, by peeing it out. Antacids, because they dampen the acid level in the upper GI tract, and you need an acid environment to properly absorb calcium. And increased phosphorus. Where do you find more phosphorus? Well, in fish, meat, and soda. For those of us who, not, I shouldn't say us, I really don't like soda, but for folks who love soda, you got to be careful of the phosphorus in the soda. It binds up calcium and it literally leaches it from your bones and just throws it out of your body. So if you are someone that loves soda, keep in mind you're losing calcium, and it's really affecting how your bones and your teeth are going to function in the long run. And fat in the diet. Lots of fatty foods found in meat and processed foods. Fat, what it does is it kind of mixes with calcium in the GI tract, and it forms like a soapy substance, and you poop out the calcium. So a lot of fat in the diet, a processed refined diet, leads to decreased calcium. And so a major point here is anybody on a lot of meat, highly processed and refined diet, you're going to have a hard time keeping calcium in your system. And that's why in the Western world, we have so much osteoporosis. Even though we drink so much milk, we still don't have strong bones. Yes, Pastor.
Mhm. Well, I had a couple of questions. Number one, fat in the diet. Are you talking about good fat as well as bad fat, or just any kind of fat here? So avocados and nuts and
Sure. So I want to make it clear, fat is important. We
mhm.
need fat. Um, Fat is vital for making certain hormones and for bodily functions, but we want to get it from the best kind of fat, like the ones you mentioned, avocados and nuts, and we don't want too much. So you want to get best quality and just a moderate amount. That's why you're always told when you eat nuts, do it in moderation. When you eat seeds, moderation. You really can't, you know, overindulge in nuts and avocados. You need to eat them. Don't avoid them. Don't shun them. But don't feel you can go to town and woohoo, have this whole bag of cashews because it's healthy. Too much fat. And that will also lead to loss of calcium. So yes, fat, too much fat leads to loss of calcium in the gut.
And so it's fat period, good or bad.
Yes.
And then of course on the high protein diet, now I've noticed you said people eat lots of meat. But my understanding is that these beans and legumes that we eat are high concentrated protein. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even more than the meat. So isn't it very possible that even a good vegetarian diet could be a high protein diet
Well,
based on the concentration?
that's a very good question. So I'm glad you made that point. On a plant-based diet, you get all the protein you need to be healthy. You do not need meat to be healthy. Beans and legumes give you adequate protein. So thank you for pointing that out. When it comes to the protein in a plant-based diet, when we eat a well-rounded plant-based diet, it's full of protein and calcium and healthy balances of phosphorus and various minerals. So we are able to process the calcium better on a diet like that. So it's kind of hard for plant-based eater to have as much or a high protein diet comparable to somebody who eats lots of steak and burgers and tons of fish. That's just an overload of protein plus acid, fat, and cholesterol. So the risk benefit ratio is completely off with a meat-based diet. With a plant-based diet, eating adequate amounts of beans and legumes, we don't often reach more than the 50 grams of protein needed a day. On a standard American diet, folks are eating like 150 grams of protein a day because they're constantly shoveling protein in a refined form. So no, studies have actually shown, Pastor, that vegetarians and vegans have much less osteoporosis than meat eaters. So if you have osteoporosis, move to a plant-based diet because the balance is much better for bone health. And it's proven by science that they have stronger bones.
Yes. And I had one other question. I noticed that aluminum, looking at the minerals, was not listed as a mineral necessary or probably not useful in our bodies. And but they make all these pots out of aluminum. So it means that when we're using aluminum pots, we are taking in aluminum, I would assume, in our foods, is being cooked in our food. Is that dangerous? And I mean, I know that, when I was a boy, my mama used to say she cook out of iron pots because when we eat the food from iron pots, we get iron. So I'm assuming cook out of aluminum pot, you get aluminum. And I was watching those minerals and I noticed, the various metals. And so talk to me about aluminum for a minute.
Yes, very good point. Very good point. So aluminum is not essential. It's not one of the minerals that are useful for health. And actually, it's been linked to a lot of detriment in the body. One of them is issues with brain function and memory. It's thought that higher amounts of aluminum can cause damage to the brain and memory issues in older years. So we want to not have aluminum in our diet. And even the pots and the utensils that we use, you're right, we should consider switching them out to metals that are healthier, like a cast iron pot. I myself need to treat myself to a nice heavy cast iron pot because those are healthier to cook in. So I definitely agree with you and want to say that it's a very good point that you made. Definitely, that's not a good mineral or metal for health of the body. Okay, so we talked about what decreased absorption of calcium. And so calcium, I'll tell you what it's useful for. I mentioned some: strong bones and teeth. Strong bones should not be taken lightly because as we get older, if our bones aren't strong and we fall, or even for folks with weak bones, if we sneeze too hard, we can break bones. And when we fracture bones in later years, it's not as easy to heal, one, and it leads to many complications. For example, when you fracture a hip, you're bedbound for a little while. And being immobile and bedbound leads to increased risk of clots. And clotting leads to can travel up to the lungs and lead to death when you have blood clots in the lungs. And so you can end up with death because of a simple hip fracture. Also, increased risk of infections from fractures lead to increased mortality. When you fracture your spinal bones, your vertebrae, your vertebral bones, it causes your lung volume to decrease because you begin to develop this hunched formation because of all the cracks in the bone in your back, bones in your back. And as you shrink, as your lungs shrink in volume, you have a higher risk of pneumonia. With pneumonia, you get hospitalization and death. So breaking a bone is not as simple as it in an older person as it is when you're a young person. And so strong bones are actually very important to maintain good health, and strong teeth. We don't want to have weak teeth and cavities. So calcium is important for that. It helps with proper blood clotting. It also helps with muscle contraction and relaxation. Folks with lots of muscle cramps, this is one that they need to look at. Are they getting enough calcium in the diet? And also the heart is dependent on enough calcium for it to pump and work normally. Calcium helps with lowering the blood pressure, and it increases absorption of vitamin B12. So how much calcium do we need? Well, the recommended daily amount is between 800 and 1,200 milligrams a day. Dairy is a very high source of calcium, but I want us to consider the risk-benefit ratio when it comes to drinking dairy. Dairy is cow's milk, cheese, ice cream, and yogurt. Some individuals really push these foods on their children because they know that children need calcium, so they push dairy on the kids. And they also feel that they should indulge in dairy, drink lots of cow's milk every day because they need strong bones. The data does not pan out that cow's milk is any good for any human being. Cow's milk is really good for baby cows. Why do I not recommend cow's milk or any form of cow's milk? Well, one is the fat. It has increased fat, which is really bad for health in terms of increase in risk of diabetes. And we know, well, there's a big link between increased cow's milk ingestion in children and type 1 diabetes. We know there's a link with that. But it increases diabetes overall, fat, and it also leads to obesity, being fat. Cow's milk is one of the most common food allergens there is. We don't think of cow's milk as leading to allergies in the body, but it's a very common allergen. What does it lead to? Issues with eczema, asthma, rheumatoid arthritis, and so many of our children have eczema and asthma. If we got them off cow's milk and cow's milk foods, you'll be surprised to see they may have a big improvement in their skin rashes and in their asthma. Also, many individuals have lactose intolerance. The sugar found in milk is not well digested as we get older. Milk has so many contaminants, antibiotics, and various contaminants that I would not recommend it for any child. The casein in milk, that's the milk protein, raises blood cholesterol. So if you're fighting cholesterol, you can't be drinking cow's milk. And there is a cancer link. Folks who have more cow's milk and cow's milk products have higher rates of breast and prostate cancer. So I would not be drinking glasses of cow's milk to get calcium, given all the potential side effects, when I can get enough from plants. And we know how beneficial plants are for us. We've been talking about plants for about more than 6 weeks now together. And it's just amazing how much good there is in plant foods. So you're saying, well, I know cow's milk has enough calcium, but I don't know what plants to eat for calcium. Well, let's look at them together. Now, keep in mind that a glass of cow's milk has about 300 milligrams of calcium. So you can make that comparison. If you want to get the RDA from cow's milk, you should be drinking about 3 to 4 cups of cow's milk every day. There are better ways to get calcium. When you look at a plant-based milk, let's say you're going to get almond milk or soy milk, these milks are fortified and they have the same amount of calcium in them per glass as does a glass of cow's milk. Um, Tofu, very high in calcium. Half a cup of tofu has 400, almost 500 milligrams of calcium. I can easily eat half a cup of tofu. Make some scrambled tofu, have it with a slice of really dense, heavy bread, whole wheat bread, and you have 500 milligrams of calcium right there. Orange juices are fortified with calcium in the store. So if you buy store-bought orange juice, there's calcium added to it. Let's look at some other more, even more natural foods like collards. A cup of collard greens has as much calcium as a cup of cow's milk. And it's not hard to eat a cup of well-seasoned, cooked up collard greens. You can also put it in a smoothie and drink it. Calcium right there. Fortified cereals, one serving has a ton of calcium, but keep in mind when you're picking your cereals, please read the labels, because sometimes the sugar content outweighs the benefits of anything else you get, like the B12 or the calcium. So make sure that sugar is not in the top three. You know, if there's a little sugar, maybe you can deal with that, but it should not be in the top three ingredients. There's too much sugar in the cereal. Turnips have a lot of calcium. Chia seeds are great because you not only get lots of calcium, but you get fiber and omega-3 fatty acids, which are vital for brain health, especially in children. Make them some chia seed pudding with some soy milk, and they can have a natural yogurt, tons of calcium just from chia seeds and soy milk. Mustard greens, you see lots of green leafy vegetables have calcium. A cup of kale, kale is awesome, 95 milligrams of calcium. Oats, I eat oats every single morning. I'm getting my calcium in a cup of oats right there. Blackstrap molasses. We need to keep blackstrap molasses in our refrigerators. Why? Because it has the highest source of iron in any plant-based food, and it also has calcium. So you can swap out your jelly that has added sugar, and instead on your peanut butter jelly sandwich, put peanut butter and molasses. Or you can add molasses to your oats, or you can add some molasses to any porridge that you make. But molasses are really lined with nice minerals, including calcium and iron. Um, you see here other green veggies, bok choy, broccoli, and even berries. Yesterday we went walking and we picked tons of raspberries. Raspberries are in season now. So we picked tons of raspberries from raspberry bushes, you know, along our walk and in our backyard. And we were getting lots of calcium right there. So plant foods are very rich in calcium, and they have other benefits than calcium that make them a win-win for our diet. I mentioned here blackstrap molasses, and just to give you a 2 tablespoons has 400 milligrams of potassium. We spoke about the plant-based milks already, tofu. Okay, so this pretty much has the same thing as the other slide. So I want to stress the importance of when you're feeding your children and you know they need calcium, you know that they need it for strong bones, you don't have to shove milk and yogurt on them. Many of them are sick because of the dairy products. Give them in the plant-based form, and they will be healthier and stronger with plant food sources of calcium. But you have to be, you know, mindful. You got to think about their meals and know that giving them a nice variety of fruits, vegetables, legumes, seeds, and nuts in good quantity, they will have what they need to be strong and healthy. So that's calcium wrapped up in a nutshell there. And I hope we feel more comfortable knowing that we don't need cow's milk for calcium. Plants give it to us perfectly.
I know. I heard, Doc, that in the case of tofu, that black men don't do too good eating too much tofu. I don't know if you've heard anything like that. They said men of other the Oriental culture seem to do well on it, but it's not good for not for black men to have too much. tofu?
There is so much controversy, or
Mhm.
some people may say controversy, surrounding tofu and soy
Mhm.
products.
Yes.
And I will have to talk about tofu at length because it's a very healthy food for
Mhm.
men, women, children, black, white, Asian. You know, the studies have been mixed, that's for sure. And at one point, one study did seem to show that maybe tofu shouldn't be eaten by men. But from gathering all the data, tofu is a very healthy food, and I would say go ahead and eat the tofu. It's healthy for men, women, and in or of our race as well.
And so you said the blackstrap molasses can fill in for that for those jellies we love to mix with our peanut butter.
Yes, yes, and it's much healthier. And when you buy your blackstrap molasses, get the unsulfured kind. It's healthier for you to get that kind. And you know what I use blackstrap molasses for often? When I'm making my barbecue sauce, because as we know, barbecue sauce is really high in sugar. Sugar is like the first ingredient, or maybe the second after tomatoes. But
Mhm.
blackstrap molasses is what they put in barbecue sauce to get that different taste, that changes it from ketchup. So when you're making your own
Uh-huh.
ketchup at home or your own blackstrap barbecue sauce at home, blackstrap molasses is what you put in there when you mix your tomatoes, your lemons, and your honey. You add your blackstrap molasses to get that flavor. So it's highest source of iron. So for young women who need iron because they're having heavy menses and they're feeling weak and run down, just take 2 tablespoons and put it on your porridge, your cereal, your sandwich, your smoothie. It's a good source for you.
So I mean, soy yogurt, is that what it is? In opposition to the natural yogurt that comes from the.
Yeah. So for a beginner
Mhm.
plant-based individual, you're just making the transition. You realize that, you could be doing better for your body. Your body wants more plants. It needs less meat. You've come to that realization, and you're trying to make the transitions. Yes, stop buying cow's yogurt or yogurt from cow's milk, and you can go to soy yogurt. But as you continue to progress to a really unprocessed, unrefined, plant-based diet, you want to eat less of these yogurts, because when you look at the ingredients, you will see that it's very high in sugar. They add a lot of sugar to yogurt to get it sweet and tasty. And then you'll start to make your own yogurt with silicone tofu and frozen fruits. So it's a process, it's a transition. But yes, you start with the soy yogurt in the store, and then eventually you get to making your own yogurt when you really want the bountiful health from an unprocessed, unrefined plant-based diet.
So, do I understand that for yogurt does something in the stomach of some sort? I'm not sure what I remember what I heard. Why
Yeah.
people are encouraged to eat it? Are you saying that the soy would do the same thing, or when you want to get off the yogurt completely, there are other foods that does whatever yogurt
Yes.
does? Why people are
So
encouraged?
what the reason it's pushed is because of the probiotics and the fermentation. Helps with the probiotics and can help with keeping the stomach in a healthy state. But
Hmm.
other fermented foods can provide the probiotics you need. Fermented cabbage, vegetables can provide that. And as you have a really healthy, unprocessed, unrefined plant-based diet, your GI tract will start to adjust and have its own healthy pro and prebiotics. So you don't need to supplement with unnatural, or I should say processed type foods. But to start, yes, as
So
you're transitioning, that can help for probiotics and
I'm just
lactobacillus
curious. So
and help with the gut. Go ahead.
you said fermented cabbage? No,
Hmm.
what exactly is that? You mean
Sauerkraut?
you? Oh, is that what it is?
Yes.
Oh, I see. I
Yes,
see.
yes. And they have other fermented foods too, that are available. But
Mhm.
so those are other sources, definitely. But as your diet becomes really unprocessed and unrefined, you won't need as many probiotics because the environment of your gut will become more healthy. You won't have that leaky gut syndrome, and you will be much healthier in your gut internally.
Well, Doc, you are awesome. We sure appreciate all the wealth of information that you bring to improve our lifestyle and our diet. And surely we'll probably live healthier, longer lives just because of you.
And this information is not hidden. It's not for a certain class of people. It is for everybody. Everybody can attain better and optimal health following God's prescription for life.